Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, as always, I begin by thanking you all for taking time out of your Monday evening to be with us and to meet with us and to study Islam with us. Mondays is always a tough day for everybody, the first day of the week, first day we're getting back to work. And as we said last time, people typically would rather take a nap after Asr as opposed to come out. So thank you for sacrificing your nap and coming out and joining us for today's meeting. As always, we like to begin by recapping the last meeting. So basically, in the last meeting, we addressed two main topics. The first topic was how Adam's sin differed from that of Iblis. And the second main topic was how Satan established himself as an ardent enemy of Adam and his progeny. Basically how Shaytan declared war on Adam and on Adam's descendants. So tonight, we'd like to enter a new phase in our discussion. We've been talking previously about how do we get here, and we talked about the story of Iblis and Adam and how, or what lessons we can take from that story, and how what happened between them affects not only Adam but his progeny. But now we want to enter a new phase of our discussion and begin talking about and providing examples for how Shaytan practices his enmity. Last week we finished on the note of a Shaytan becoming an ardent enemy or declaring war. So now how does he practice? What are his mechanisms of warfare? What are his weapons of warfare? What does he use to attack us? We want to enter into that phase. How does he practice his enmity against Adam and his progeny? And this is an important topic, brothers and sisters. What we're going to get into now, this phase here, is extremely important. Perhaps it's even more important than the previous phase, and the previous phase was very important. This is an important topic because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to take the Shaytan as an enemy. Inna Shaytan lakum aduwwun fattakhiduhu aduwwa. Indeed, the Shaytan is an enemy to you, so take him as an enemy. And one of the best ways to take the Shaytan as an enemy is to learn how he tries to attack us. The traps that he sets for us, the tricks he plays upon us, etc., so we can recognize them and avoid them. It's like if you knew that your enemy had this missile system that could send these guided missiles into your land. How would you protect yourself? You get one of those anti-missile defense systems. So when your radar picks up the missiles coming, this system will automatically shoot off missiles that will intercept those missiles and make them explode in the air as opposed to hitting the ground. Once you know what weapons they have, you do what? You create or you purchase the anti-weapon. The thing that can protect you from that weapon. So in order for us to do that, we need to know what his weapons are. What are the weapons of his warfare? What are the tricks of his trade, etc.? So this topic that we're going to get into tonight is very important, but before we dive into this topic of how the Shaytan practices enmity, as always, we like to recap and review what we learned the previous week, because the more we review, the more the information will stay with us, and the more the information stays with us, the more likely we are to practice it and live by it. So one of the things that we learned last week, we spent some time talking about how the Shaytan seduced Adam and his wife Hawa, and how he came to them and he swore to them that he was a sincere advisor to them, and that if they ate from the tree which Allah had forbidden for them, that they would become malakain, they would become angels, or they would become al-khalidin, they would come from those people who are immortal. And he used other suggestions and whispers, etc., to convince them to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to eat from the forbidden tree. So we talked about those ayat, and we talked about the lesson from that being that the Muslims do not believe, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَزَلَّهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا فَأَخْرَجَهُمَا مِمَّا كَانَ فِيهِ. He says that Shaytan, that he was the one who made them slip, made them, Adam and his wife Hawa, made them slip. And he was the one who caused them to be expelled from it. So what that teaches us is that contrary to the Christian concept that Eve seduced Adam and is therefore blameworthy for what happened, in Islam we don't believe that. We believe that both of them were seduced by the Shaytan and they willfully chose to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and eat from the forbidden tree. It wasn't that Adam was beguiled by his wife and therefore she is somehow more blameworthy than him, or she bears all of the blame. Second thing that we want to mention from last week is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they did slip, when they did make their mistake, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he reminded Adam and his wife of the command he had given them. And he reminded them also, or he called their attention to the fact that they had violated his command. It's the same thing he did with Iblis. You guys recall when Iblis disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, he said, he said, ما منعك, جزاك he said, ما منعك أن تسجد إذ أمرتك. Right? He said, what prevented you from prostrating when I commanded you? Like giving Shaytan, giving Iblis the chance to do what? To walk it back. Reminding him, look, I commanded you to do something. What prevented you from, when I tell you to do something, you better do it. So, or you better have a good reason not to. So if you don't have a good reason, walk it back. This is your chance, basically. He did that for Iblis. Iblis didn't walk it back. He did the same thing for Adam. He gave Adam a chance and his wife Hawa the chance to do what? To walk it back. And Adam's response to Allah's reprimand was starkly different from that of Iblis. He acknowledged his error and asked Allah for forgiveness. He said, or both of them said, رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا فَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. They said, oh our Lord, indeed we have wronged ourselves. Right? Disobeying you was wrong. And we were wrong for doing that. They admitted their error. And if you don't forgive us and have mercy upon us, we'll be from those people who lose out on salvation. We'll be from the losers, meaning we lose out on salvation. But when they made this prayer and they sincerely repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave them. When they sincerely turned toward Allah in repentance, Allah turned toward them in forgiveness. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَلَقَّى آدَمْ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. So Adam, he received words from his Lord. He was inspired by his Lord to say words of penitence. And his Lord turned to him in forgiveness. Indeed, his Lord is oft forgiving, most merciful. What is the implication? We said last week, the implication is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he expects that if we sin, if we make a mistake, if we slip, he expects us to admit our error and seek his forgiveness, just like Adam did. This is important because some of us get the impression, and a lot of it comes from the Shaytan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to be perfect. So if we make a mistake, we despair of Allah's mercy. We say, I did this, Allah's not going to forgive me, so why bother seeking Allah's forgiveness? I might as well just continue down this path of sinfulness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows we're going to make mistakes. He knows we're human. He just wants us, when we make mistakes, just like our Father did, He wants us to admit we're wrong and to seek His forgiveness. But so now, we also talked about how if you just look at the situation on the surface. If you look at what happened with the most, if you look at the situation just with the most shallow nadra, with the most shallow perspective, or from the most shallow perspective, or the most shallow view, you say, what happened? Iblis sinned, Adam sinned. Allah didn't forgive Iblis, He forgave Adam. If you just look at it with the most shallow view, right? But if you look at it with some depth, you notice that when Iblis sinned, the motive for his sin was different from the motive of Adam. You also notice that the response was starkly different from the response of Adam when he sinned and he was called on it. And we said from that we can learn two things. One, all sins are not created equal. They're not created equal, right? That when two people sin, just because they sin, even if it's the same sin, doesn't mean that it's the same in the sight of Allah. So let's say, for example, we have two people. Both of them, they go and they buy homes on interest. Is that a sin in Islam? Yes. It's a sin because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Says Allah has legalized interest and He's prohibited, He's legalized trade and prohibited interest. But one of them, they went and they bought a home on interest out of desperation. Desperate. I got 7 kids and no one will rent to me. And I've been living in the street sometimes, out of my car sometimes, at other people's houses sometimes. I'm just desperate. I'm just broken. And I'm only doing this because I just need to house these kids, man. And so I'm doing this and I know it's wrong. I know it's a sin. And I'm gonna bust my behind and try to get it paid off. You know, another person who I want to live nice. And so I decide that it's not fair for me to have to rent when I can just buy a home on interest. It's not fair for me to buy a home with the money I have, the cash I have on hand, and it's a home that's modest. When I make enough money to get a good enough loan to buy what? Almost a mansion. Are they the same? They both bought a house on interest, but one of them bought it almost out of hubris, like whatever. The command of Allah doesn't make sense to me. And the other one out of brokenness and humility and admitting that they're wrong. They're not the same. So basically, coming back to the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when people sin, He looks at a few things, and two of the primary things He looks at is a dafa, the motive, what prompted the person to do it. And the second thing is the response. Once they're called on it, how do they respond? Ayastahil, does the person legalize it? Does he justify it? Or does he admit, yeah, I'm wrong, you got me dead to rights, I shouldn't be doing this, and I need to figure out how I can fix it. How I can fix the wrong that I did, and how I can fix my relationship with Allah. Another thing we saw last week was that the Shaytan, when he was called on his sin, did he blame himself? He blamed Allah. He said, فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. He said, because you have led me astray, you, God, you led me astray, it's your fault. He blamed Allah for his sin. And that was one of the things that made his sin reach the level of disbelief. Sin itself is not disbelief. Sin is something that people are prone to do, but people can sin, and their attitude towards the sin can make them disbelievers. which was the case with Iblis, as Allah says, Aba wastakbar. He refused and became arrogant. Like, I refuse and I'm in my right. It's my right. I'm entitled to refuse. فَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And he became, because of that attitude, from the disbelievers. And since this is something that Shaytan did, and we learned previously that everything Shaytan does and everything he invites us to do that contradicts what Allah wants us to do is from his footsteps. And Allah tells us in the Qur'an, لَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Don't follow the footsteps of Shaytan. So what that teaches us, as we learned, is anything the Shaytan does, anything he invites us to do contrary to Allah's law, is from his footsteps, and therefore it is prohibited. So it's prohibited for believers to justify their sin, or even worse, to blame Allah when they sin. We also talked about how the Shaytan, and this is important because it sets us up for what we're going to talk about tonight, how the Shaytan, he said, لَأَقْعُدَنَّهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. I'm going to lie in ambush for them. I'm going to wait in the bushes for them. I'm going to wait when they least expect it, when they don't see me coming, and I'm going to attack them. In the other ayah, he said, لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. I'm going to come to them from the front, and from the back, and from their right side, and from their left side. I'm going to attack them from all angles. This is a declaration of war, and then we asked ourselves, but are we conducting ourselves as if we're at war with the Shaytan? Are we really defending ourselves and putting up our defenses and fortifying ourselves against the Shaytan the way we need to? We talked about learning Ayat al-Kursi. We talked about, for example, the adhkar the Prophet taught us that we can use to break the Shaytan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Even Bismillah. When you enter your home, when you enter your home and you say Bismillah, the Shaytan says to the other Shaytan, there's no place for you to stay tonight. Right? When you enter your house and you say Bismillah, then if you eat and you say Bismillah, the Shaytan says to the other Shaytan, there's no food for you either. Then if you forget to say Bismillah, and while you're eating you remember and you say Bismillah awwalahu wa akhirahu. The Shaytan, the whole time when you didn't say Bismillah, he's what? He's eating with you. But as soon as you say Bismillah awwalahu wa akhirahu, what does he do? He vomits. When he hears Surah Al-Baqarah, he flees from the home. It's like all these adhkar and different methods the Prophet gave us to fortify ourselves. Are we using them? Are we using them? We talked about how the Shaytan, he attacks us from all angles, which is an indication that he is unrelenting, he is ruthless, and he has no pity. The Shaytan is an enemy which you can't bribe and you can't kill with kindness. See, if you look in the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in more than one place, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, in Surah Al-A'raf, and in one other place in the Qur'an, toward the back end, the surah is a little cloudy, but I'm going to give you the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us when it comes to our enemies from the human beings, that in many cases, you can blunt the sharpness of their enmity. You can win them over and make them your friend by being kind, by killing them with kindness, by meeting their enmity with love and affection, etc. So in the one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Says good and evil are not equal. They can never be equal. So repel evil with that which is better than it, meaning good. Then he says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. You will find that the one who had previously been your most bitter enemy will become your best friend. You tolerate, you're patient, you're kind, you kill them with kindness, you meet their cruelty with kindness, and pretty soon you wear them down and they're like, man, this is just a good dude. I'm going to be this man's friend. Allah says. That works most of the time with humankind. That's why Allah put it in the Qur'an as a qa'idah, as a principle. But then after that, immediately he says, وَإِمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. He says, but if the Shaytan gives you some evil suggestion, if the Shaytan attacks you, don't think you can kill him with kindness. Your only hope is the refuge of Allah. He says, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. Seek refuge from the Shaytan. Why? Because he's unrelenting, he has no pity, he hates you, and he wants to destroy you. You can never make him your friend unless you sell him your soul. You guys see that? But from بعد ذلك, we talked also about how the Shaytan has an army of minions. Allah talks about that in Surah Al-Isra. He says, وَأَجْلِبْ عَلَيْهِمْ بِخَيْلِكَ وَرَجِلِكَ. He says, and assault them with your cavalry and your infantry. Yes, subhanAllah. So, that means that Shaytan is not by himself. He has all these other minions, and it's also important for us to note that those minions are not all from the jinn kind. Some of them are from mankind. But they're actually people, human beings, who are doing the work of the devil, and not all of them are non-Muslims. There are some Muslims, perhaps they don't realize that they're doing the work of the devil, and some of them may actually have willfully chosen to do the work of the devil, but they are out there. And they're not all common people, like you and me. Some of them are people who, some people consider them to be learned. They're people with credentials, with lots of letters after their name. And there are people who are celebrities with hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of followers all over the world. And they are saying and doing things and preaching a message which is misleading the people. They are doing the devil's work. They are serving in his army. There are people writing articles, teaching the Muslims in mass that it's okay for the Muslims to have a tawaqquf, to neither be for or against, to neither believe or disbelieve in the theory of Darwin. The theory that man evolved from apes. It's okay for the believers to say, it could have happened. To be agnostic. We don't say it did, we don't say it didn't. Whereas the scholars of Islam, the scholars of high repute, they say it is mujma'un alayh, it is the agreement of the scholars that the theory of Darwin is kufr, it is disbelief, and it is obligatory upon the Muslims to disbelieve in it, to actually affirm and to assert that this is wrong. Why? Because it contradicts not only the Qur'an, but Sarih al-Hadith, Sarih al-Sunnah. The Prophet said in the Hadith, he said, خَلَقَ اللَّهُ آدَمَ فِي أَحْسَنِ سُورَةٍ. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam in the best form. Then he goes on, he mentions the Hadith, how he told him to go and give salams to the malaika. He also talked about how tall he was. He said, وَطُولُهُ سِتُّونَ ذِرَاعًا. He was 60 cubits tall. Then he told him, he said, go and give salam to that group of the angels. Listen to their greeting. Whatever they greet you with is your greeting and the greeting of your progeny. So he did. Then the Prophet went on to say at the end of the hadith, he said, فَمَا زَالَ النَّاسُ فَمَا زَالَ الْإِنسَانُ or فَمَا زَالَ النَّاسُ يَنْقُسُ حَتَّى الْآنِ or كَمَا قَالَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. He said, people have not ceased to do what? To devolve. Not to evolve. To devolve since that time. That when Adam was created, he wasn't created in an inferior state. He was in what? The most perfect ahsani surah. And we've gotten what? We've devolved. We're not as good as Adam. Perhaps intellectually, physically, spiritually. We have what? We have devolved, not evolved, as they say, that man was ape and he what? Evolved into man. Then you have people who, again, the celebrity Imams, telling people that qasas al-Qur'an, the stories of the Qur'an, they are غير حقيقية. Maybe some of them, maybe all of them. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, tells us the story of Ya'juj wa Ma'juj, in the Qur'an twice He mentions it, and it's mentioned in the hadith, in a handful of a hadith. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that, they say, oh, it's metaphorical. It's figurative. These are not real people. It refers to things like diseases and bacteria, viruses, like smallpox. Or it refers to, I don't know, the spirit of evil, or I don't know, but it's not real, they say. Whereas the scholars of Islam who have talked about the science of Quran have said that every story in the Quran is real. None of them are metaphorical. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us stories which have no reality to them. And last but not least from the examples, I just want to give these examples because you're going to see these things. And you need to be aware that these people who we consider to be trustworthy, they're not trustworthy. And we shouldn't trust them with our religion. So we have these preachers, again, celebrity Imams who are very active in the field of da'wah, and particularly active in the field that they call interfaith. And what they mean by interfaith, basically in practice, is blurring the lines between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Blurring the lines of distinction. They keep using the word Abrahamic faiths as if to say that they're one faith. Wahdatu al-adyan, the unity of religions. Let's focus on what we agree on, accentuate where we agree, and downplay where we disagree. To the point that one of them went on one of these interfaith activities, initiatives, and there were people with him who are just common people. They don't know any better. And these priests and pastors from Christianity, they were anointing people. You guys know what anointing is? It's where the pastor will dip his finger in oil, and then he will take that oil and write a cross. And there's images on the internet of people who were in his party, following him, thinking this is okay. One girl who got anointed with the cross. That is disbelief. And these people don't even have the decency to apologize, to apologize and display true penitence. Like, I really feel bad that somebody got a cross put on there and just did not know any better, and I wasn't doing my job, and maybe we shouldn't have been there. It's not an apology like that. It's an apology like, look, you know, these kind of things happen in this interfaith work that we're trying to do, as if interfaith is something Allah told us to do in the first place. So I say all this to say, because I know I've digressed, quite a bit, but this is important. These people are out there with big names, celebrity names, and all these followers, and letters behind their name, and there's nothing wrong with the letters behind your name. But what's more important than letters behind your name is the truth that you carry. These people have an obligation with so many people following them. They have an obligation to maintain the integrity of Islam when they preach. And not to be people who, because of their credentials, are going to be trusted, and they betray that trust. And they teach you falsehood and mislead you. Like the last of the recaps was that in the one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talked about how the Shaytan will وَشَارِكْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ وَيَدْعُهُمْ وَمَا يَدْعُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ إِلَّا غُرُورًا. He told them, go ahead and share with them in wealth and children. And we talked about how that means where a person, the Shaytan will convince the person to use their wealth and use their children to commit sin or to justify the commission of sin. So for example, this is very common. People will do things that they know are wrong, or they will fail to fulfill their religious obligations, and they'll justify it by saying, I have to take care of my family. People will be in a community where there's a lot of activity. And it's, for example, Islamic school. There's classes, there's programs for men and women. So his faith is safe, His wife's faith is safe. His children's faith is safe because of all the activity and all of the measures that are there to protect them from going astray. But he's offered a job with a handsome salary where it's a desert as far as spirituality. I gotta take care of my family, so he goes. Not that he's not taking care of his family where he is, but he can take care of them better there, and he goes. The Shaytan is the one who convinces us, yeah, go, because you have to take care of your family. He tries to paint it in a way to make it seem like it's religious. And we're doing this for religious reasons. You gotta take care of your family, it's part of the religion. But he uses that to trick us, and uses it to what? To make the money and the leaving of the deen, or the being neglectful, negligent of the deen. He uses that, uses the children to make us what? Go astray. So we have to be careful of that as well. And this is part of the meaning when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَشَارِكْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. Like ثم بعد ذلك, we said we were going to talk about how the Shaytan practices his enmity against Adam and his progeny. We're going to begin talking about that tonight, and we're going to speak about that for the next few weeks because it's a very important topic. As we said, the way we protect ourselves from the Shaytan and his attacks is by knowing those attacks and knowing the counterattacks. But if we don't know the attacks, if we're oblivious to them, it makes it easy for him to have success against us. So we're going to highlight some of those texts that show how the Shaytan practices his enmity against Adam and his progeny and tries to bring about our spiritual rule. The first one that we're going to look at tonight comes to us from Surah Al-Ma'idah. And I want to say it's verses number, I want to say it's like 80, it's in the mid 80s. I didn't write the number down, unfortunately, but I want to say it's in the mid 80s to upper 80s, the ayat, or the two ayat. And it's the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم ترحمون. لعلكم تفلحون. إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء بالخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون. So in these two verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, intoxicants, gambling, offering sacrifices on altars erected to false deities, and superstitious divination of arrows are abominations from Satan's handiwork. Avoid them so that you may prosper. Then he goes on to say, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Satan merely aims to excite enmity and hatred among you through intoxicants and gambling, and to prevent you from the remembrance of God and from prayer. Will you not then abstain? So there's a few things here before I focus on one part of the ayat. So the first thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, min amal ash-shaytan, right? He says they are from Satan's handiwork. So that means that they're from the things that the Shaytan, he glamorizes, he promotes, he embellishes, as opposed to that which Allah loves and is pleased with. So basically, gambling, intoxicants, all these things are those things which people consider to be cool. Why do they consider to be cool? Because the Shaytan glamorizes it. He embellishes it. And these are the things that people should do. These are the things that make people, that are signs of success. They're signs of a person being liberated and free and in control of their life, a person being fun-loving, etc. and so on. He glamorizes it in this way, promotes it in this way, embellishes it in this way. The second thing is that when Allah puts it like that and says it's Satan's handiwork, we said that it also teaches us that Allah is displeased with it. Shaytan makes it something that Allah is displeased with, makes it look good. And if Allah is displeased with it, that means that the believers are supposed to despise it. Because our love for things, what we glamorize, should come and go in accordance with what pleases Allah and what displeases Allah. As Ibn Abbas, he said, Al-hubbu fillah wal-bughdu fillah. إنما تنال ولاية الله بذلك ولا ينال العبد لا what do you say ولا no, he said ولا يجد العبد طعم الإيمان حتى يكون كذلك إنما تنال ولاية الله بذلك ولا يجد العبد طعم الإيمان حتى يكون كذلك. طيب. So he said, Ibn Abbas, he said, loving for Allah. What's expected of the believer that he loves for Allah, he hates for Allah, and he has to know that he can never attain the friendship of Allah until he's like that. He loves what Allah loves, he hates what Allah hates. He surrenders not just his limbs, but his heart to Allah's will. Allah hates alcohol, I hate alcohol, just because Allah hates it. He can never be the friend of Allah, gain the friendship of Allah until he's like that, and he will never taste the sweetness of faith. وَإِنْ كَثُرَ صَلَاتُهُ وَصَوْمُهُ. I forgot that. وَإِنْ كَثُرَ صَلَاتُهُ وَصَوْمُهُ. Even if he fasts a lot and prays a lot, until he is like that. He loves for Allah and hates for Allah. But ثم بعد ذلك, Allah says something very important in this ayah, which is something we want to focus on after we get through the points. He says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانَ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ بِالْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. He says, Satan merely aims to excite enmity and hatred among you. When he says among you, who is he talking about? Among human beings?
Believers.
Among the believers. He wants to turn a believing husband against his believing wife. Wants to turn a believing wife against her believing husband. Wants to turn a parent against their child, a child against a parent. A brother against a brother, a sister against a sister, a friend against a friend, and so on amongst the believers. The Shaytan is keen to do this. And Al-Tabari, rahimahullah ta'ala, he explains, he says, يُرِيدُ أَن يُشَتِّتْ أَمْرَكُمْ بَعْدَ تَأْلِيفِ اللَّهِ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْإِيمَانِ وَجَمْعِهِ بَيْنَكُمْ بِأُخُوَّةِ الْإِسْلَامِ. He says, he seeks to divide you and sow discord in your ranks after Allah has put you in accord. Put you in accord with one another through your shared faith and united you through the brotherhood of Islam. Islam brought you together. Faith brought you together, and the Shaytan wants to do what? He wants to break you to pieces. He wants you to be factions and sects and groups. He wants you to be people who are supposed to love each other, but really, in reality, harbor hatred towards one another. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Bil khamri wal maisir. He says he wants to sow this discord and enmity and hatred among you through intoxicants and gambling. ذكرهما على سبيل المثال لا الحصر. He mentioned intoxicants and gambling as an example and not with the intention of speaking exclusively. Allah is not saying that the only way Shaytan seeks to create a da'wah is through intoxicants and gambling. Because if that were the case, he wouldn't be able to sow discord amongst what? The believers, because we don't drink and we don't gamble, inshallah. Also, we know this because in the Qur'an, Allah mentions how the Shaytan is eager to sow discord in any way that he can. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ. He says, and say to my servants, they should say that which is best. Indeed, the Shaytan sows discord amongst them. So basically, the Shaytan will not just use gambling and use Intoxicants, he'll also use our words, our choice of words. That if we're not careful about how we say things and we leave room for interpretation, there is going to be an interpreter. And you know who that interpreter is? A Shaytan. And he is going to interpret what we said in the worst way possible. They said this and they meant this. That voice that people hear, telling them what the believer said and painting it in the worst light possible, is the Shaytan. Be careful what you say, because if you don't, in the Shaytan yanzabu bainahum, Allah, the Shaytan is going to come and say, you know, that statement is open to interpretation. It could be meant in a bunch of different ways, and he probably meant this. And so we have to be very careful in this regard, because the Shaytan is keen to sow discord, especially amongst the believers, brothers, friends, etc. It's also the case between husband and wife, and not with intoxicants necessarily, not with gambling necessarily, in any way he can. And we know this because the Prophet said in the hadith collected by Muslim, he said that the Shaytan, he puts his throne over water. And he summons his minions. He wants them to come and report to him, tell him what mischief they made. And so they come one by one and they say, I did this. I made a man rob a bank. I made a man commit murder. I made a man steal. And the Shaytan, one by one, he dismisses them. You haven't done anything. I'm not impressed, he says. Then ultimately, one of the shayateen comes and he says, I created discord between a man and his wife, and I continue to just poke and poke and poke until they separated, until they went their separate ways. And then the Shaytan, he says, you come close. You're the one. You're the one, meaning you're the one who did something good. So I say all this to say that these are a few examples to show you that the Shaytan is keen to sow discord amongst the believers. And whatever relationship they have, they could be siblings, they could be friends, they could be husband and wife. The Shaytan is going to try to create problems between them, because this is one of his favorite tricks or weapons of war against the believers. Then Allah goes on to say that the Shaytan, he wants to prevent you from remembrance of God and from the prayer. وَيَصُدُّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ, to prevent you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Again here, when Allah mentions remembrance of Allah and he mentions prayer, he's mentioning them ala sabil and mithal. He's mentioning them as an example, not to speak exclusively. The example that Allah is giving is the example of things that will win us salvation in the afterlife. He mentions dhikr and salah as examples of that. Basically, the Shaytan wants to block you from doing anything that will get you into heaven. Anything that will get you closer to Allah. You have to understand that the Shaytan is satisfied with any win against you. So obviously, the greatest win to the Shaytan is for you to disbelieve. But if he can't get you to disbelieve and he can get you to do less good deeds and earn less or fewer rewards from Allah, he's satisfied with that. وَيَصُدُّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ. Right? Block you from remembering Allah, block you from praying, even though he doesn't block you from believing. You guys see that? Satisfied with any victory. And so basically, the Shaytan, if he can't get you to not pray, he'd at least like you to pray outside of the time. If he can't get you to not pray, he'd at least like you to pray at the time where it's makruh. You get less reward for it. You guys see that? And so the Shaytan is constantly trying to trick us and distract us with what? With different things. Not just intoxicants and gambling, but different things. Pastimes, right? So for example, how many times does it happen that the prayer comes in and we're in the middle of a TV program or a good movie? And we just keep watching and watching until what? Until it's almost time for the prayer to go out. And then you got to hurry up and try to make the prayer. Or people are distracted by a sporting event, right? For example, there's this like very important match between this great team and this great team, right? And those matches last a long time, especially if they go into extra sessions, right? Overtime. And so he's just like, come on, man. Come on, get the goal, come on. Oh. And he's watching the sporting event and really into the sporting event and looks up. Started just before Asr and went into Maghrib. Looks outside. It's dusk. Didn't get Asr. So caught into the sporting event, Shaytan loves that. And he keeps telling you, 5 more minutes. They're going to get a goal. 5 more minutes, right? Also for our young ones, it's what? It's the games. Up all night on the game. Right? Parents are fast asleep. They pretend to be asleep. Once they know the parents are asleep, they get up, turn the game on, right? And they're up all night on the game. And then, just before Fajr, sleep comes to them. Fall asleep and can't be woken up. Miss Fajr, right? Shaytan. Then he says, I want to come back and circle back to something I want to focus on as we close, and we'll try to leave time for some discussion. And that was the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which he said, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ يُوقِيَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ. That the Shaytan merely aims to excite enmity and hatred among you. Brothers and sisters, we live in a time where there is so much unjustified, unwarranted, underscore those two words, unjustified, unwarranted, enmity and hatred amongst the Muslims. And much of it, if not most of it, is the work of the devil. And it's not just the groups, because we have a lot of those. We have these groups, and we have these factions, and we have these sects. This group calls itself this group, and that group calls that group that name. So for example, Salafi, and Wahhabi, and Ikhwani, you have all these groups, right? They're always attacking each other, and some of them are attacking each other justly, and some of them are attacking each other unjustly. You also have the other groups that we create. The groups that center around al-jins, wal-unsur, wal-lawn, color, and race, and ethnicity. Those groups that center around al-watan, nation. So people become factions around the place where they were born or the passport that they carry. And so now we are Saudis, for example. We are Palestinians and we hate the Saudis. We're Saudis and we hate these people, whatever, because they're not from our watan, they're not from our nation, etc. So we have that problem, and that's a big problem. And a lot of these hatred and enmity that's going on between these different groups, a lot of it's unjustified. But more importantly, it's the brothers and the sisters. People who have known each other for years. It's the couples and the friends. It's the blood siblings, people who are blood relatives. The one that really gets you is that the Shaytan is turning them against each other and turning them into bitter enemies. Turning blood brothers and blood sisters, turning Muslim brothers and Muslim sisters into bitter enemies. What's even more sad is, because we're Muslims and we should know better, is that seldom do we recognize that this discord is the devil's handiwork. The devil is at work. And some of us, we may recognize it. I see a lot of this is from the Shaytan. I see it, but they feel ill-equipped to respond, to protect themselves from what the Shaytan, the road that the Shaytan has them going down. They feel like there's no turning back. This is what it is. So in closing, what I want to do is offer a few methods that will help us prevent the Shaytan from destroying our relationships and coming between us, as Allah says that He will do. يُوقِعُ بَيْنَكُمْ يُرِيدُ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ. He wants to create discord and enmity and hatred amongst you. So what are some of the things that we can do? Because we said the main thing that we do is we learn the tricks of the Shaytan, we learn about his missiles, and then we create what? The anti-missile defense system. So what is the anti-missile defense system for his attempts to create an adawah, enmity, and hatred amongst us? The first thing is we need to avoid suspicion, illegal suspicion. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. He says, avoid a great deal of suspicion, or indeed some suspicion. He said some suspicion is sin. Like, what is that some suspicion which is sin? The scholars of Islam have explained. It is ظنك السوء بأخيك المسلم بلا مستند. It is when you think, you assume the worst about your fellow Muslim without any concrete evidence. So that's one thing Allah is telling us. And why is Allah telling us to avoid suspicion? Because the Shaytan will use the suspicion to create what? Discord. To create strife and enmity amongst the Muslims. But another method that we can use to defend ourselves against the Shaytan's attempt to create this discord is giving each other the benefit of the doubt. Giving each other the benefit of the doubt. And that kind of goes back to when Allah says, avoid a great deal of suspicion. Give your fellow Muslim brother or sister, give your husband or your wife, give them the benefit of the doubt. They say something that could be interpreted more than one way. Try to interpret it what? In the best way. Try to interpret it in the best way. Give them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't mean it like that. They didn't say it like that. This is a big problem. And I hope you guys are listening. This is a big problem. You know, husband and wife who should know each other better. It's like you say something to your wife and you're maybe just joking. They should know when you're joking, for the most part. Or you say something and you don't mean anything necessarily by it, but they take offense to it. When whatever you said, it could be taken that way, but also could be taken a different way. We should what? Try to give each other the benefit of the doubt. Another important defense mechanism is making excuses. As it's been reported from some of the early Muslims that they used to say, "Iltamas li akhika 70 udra." Try and find an excuse for your brother and keep trying to find an excuse for them, make excuse for them, up to 70 excuses. فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدْ لَهُ عُذْرًا. And if after 70 excuses you just don't find an excuse which makes sense, it's appropriate, فَقُلْ, then say, لَعَلَّ لَهُ عُذْرًا لَا أَعْرِفُهُ. Perhaps he has an excuse, I can't think of it. But through Baghdadic, another important mechanism that we can use, and this is especially important for husbands and wives, is a taghaful. Overlooking, and maybe a better way to say a taghaful is acting as if you didn't see. Acting as if you didn't see. So you see something that they did, or they said, or whatever, and you don't like it, and you have the choice to make a big deal out of it, or to act like what? Like it didn't even happen. A taghaful. To the point that some people call this a taghaful, they call it an art form. The art of overlooking. The art of not making a big deal out of what? Out of everything. The through Baghdadic, another important mechanism is al-afu. Al-afu means basically letting things go. The person did something, you know they were wrong, they know they were wrong, and you're harboring it, you're holding it. And that holding of it, it's basically something that it's almost like dynamite that the Shaytan is able to what? To ignite. So if you had a stick of dynamite in your hand with like a little wick, right? And there was a bunch of fire around you. If you keep holding it, you're probably going to run into some of this fire and it's going to get lit and then it's going to explode. Would you keep holding it? It's almost like we've been taught in Islam, let those things go because they can destroy you and they can destroy others. And sometimes the thing that you're asked to let go is not the easiest thing to let go. that you really have been wronged by the other person, but if you hold on to it, the Shaytan is going to light a fire to it, and it's going to destroy you, it's going to destroy them, and destroy others in the process. So Allah says, just what? Just let it go. And I'll give you a famous example, hopefully ala ujala. That's the example of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, when his daughter was accused of the worst things, one of the worst things a person can be accused of. And she wasn't just accused of that by just anyone, she was accused of that by his relative. And not just any relative, a relative that he was financially supporting. So Abu Bakr said, Wallahi, I'm not going to give him another cent after what he did or what he said. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, وَلَا يَأْتِلُ الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أَنْ يُؤْتُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَالْمُجَاهِدِينَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا يُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't let the people who have been given supplemental wealth swear that they won't spend their money on the people who are from their family, their relatives, their kindred, they're poor, and they're from the people who fought in the way of Allah. Let them rather, as Allah says, يَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا. Let them basically forgive and forget. Let them what? Let go. Don't they want to be forgiven by Allah? And Allah is the most forgiving. And then last but not least, we learned this in the course of the discussion, and I'll just repeat it here. Another mechanism against the Shaitan's attempt to sow discord amongst us is to say that which is best. And sometimes, this is one of the reasons why the Prophet said, he said, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لَيَصْمُتْ. He said, let he who believes in Allah on the last day say that which is good or remain silent. In many cases, we don't choose our words carefully. We say the first thing that comes to our mind. It doesn't land well, and that's where a lot of the problems come. And so sometimes it's better just to be quiet. The more you talk, the more you create problems. So I say all that to say these are some of the mechanisms we can use to prevent the discord from occurring amongst us. I hope that we'll use these mechanisms because Allah wants us to take the Shaytan as an enemy, which means know his tricks and know how to counter his tricks. I'll conclude with a couple of announcements. We mentioned last week that we go to the flea market for dawah weekly. And if there's anyone who would like to join us, we usually come here and collect some materials, and then we go out usually around 10:30. We're here, and then we get out there in time to spend about 2.5 hours before we return for Salat or Dhuhr. So if anybody would like to come, you can just email me, let me know. And there's no pressure, it's just an offer that we're out there and we speak to the non-Muslims, we give them some of our brochures and booklets, and you never know. The next shahada might come from your hand. Something you said, a pamphlet that you gave, and the Prophet said in the hadith, لَأَنْ يَهْدِيَ اللَّهُ بِكَ رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ حُمُرِ النَّعَمِ. That if Allah were to guide one person through you, it would be better for you than the best of wealth. And last but not least, the camp got off to a very good start today. And we have some very, very good volunteers, particularly on the women's side, who are doing a lot of good work. But on the brother side, we kind of struggle with volunteers. Obviously, a lot of brothers are at work, and we respect that, we understand that. But if there are some people who have, flexible schedules and they can give some time to help us with chaperoning and stuff like that for some of the offsite activities, we would welcome that. So again, no pressure, but if you're able to make some time, especially on the brother side, we appreciate it. And with that, we'll bring today's session to a close. Are there any questions, comments, or topics you guys would like to discuss in the last few minutes that we have? هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك. Anything, any questions, any comments, any critiques? تفضل أبو خديجة, تفضل.
Sometimes we have, you said Shaytan whispers in the ears. Is there sometimes some good things that whispers to us? Because most people, they say listen to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a good or bad listen, so how we can separate which one?
Well, people say listen to your heart, and there's actually a hadith where the Prophet said, "Al-ithmu mahaka fi sadrik." He said that sin is that which kind of what? It kind of rattles around in your heart. It bothers you, disturbs you. But that statement of the Prophet ﷺ is for the people who they have purity in their heart. So you have some people who their heart can reach a level of corruption where there's no rattling when sin comes. So I think it's dangerous if we just say absolutely in an absolute sense, if we were to say, listen to your heart. But rather, what we say is, listen to Allah. Listen to the Prophet. So if it occurs to your heart, and you present what occurs to your heart to the Qur'an, you present to the Hadith, as interpreted by the reputable scholars, and they're in accord, then yeah, go for it. But I think that we have to be careful, because the Shaytan is very tricky, and he'll convince us that yeah, listen to your heart, and then he'll use the heart to guide us astray. So that's why the Qur'an is there. That's why the Sunnah is there. That's why the teachings are there. As we talked about in one of the earlier sessions, they're there to brighten us, to rein us in, to keep us from going astray to the right or to the left. And so that's what we have to always do. And sometimes I think some Muslims, they get exhausted from that. That they just, for them, having to constantly refer to the Qur'an, refer to the Hadith, verify. They think it should be easier. It should be less arduous. There should be, less work involved. And that's just not the case. In Islam, we have the Qur'an. We are favored by Allah to have a book that He preserved, a book that we can trust and have complete confidence from the first page to the last page. And Allah wants us to use that book and constantly refer to that book, and that will keep us safe. But if we become lazy, or we become just disinterested in being people who constantly read the Quran, the reference of the Quran and the Hadith, then we open the door for the Shaytan to lead us astray. تفضل شيخ أحمد.
When you spoke about Darwin, it goes in school and stuff like that, how does Islam stand about like natural selection, adaptation, other species? How does Islam talk about like evolving different species? Like, do we actually believe in it? Do we?
See, natural selection, there's a lot to that, especially when you start talking about something that's kind of that has been an extension of that, which is eugenics. The belief that there are some people who their race, their ethnicity is somehow superior, and therefore they deserve to survive. And there are other races and ethnicities which are inferior, and therefore they deserve to be either killed off or allowed to die off. So obviously Islam doesn't approve of any type of preferential treatment or prejudice based upon an unsur. But as far as the belief or people studying how species adapt to their environment, I don't think that Islam disapproves of anything that can be supported by observation, that can be supported by valid experiment. Islam has never been opposed to science, but what Islam is opposed to is how science can be manipulated to foster, to promote ideas and beliefs which are contradictory to Islam and the teachings of Islam. And so I think we have two things here. Ahmed You have species, whether we're talking about plant life or animal life, that kind of adapt to their surroundings. And they'll call that natural selection, right? They'll call it evolution. Whereas Islam would say, no, it's just adapting to the environment. It's the instincts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the creatures and the ability for them to what? To continue their existence, right? And so we would credit Allah with that. Of course, they don't believe in Allah, so they would say it's natural selection. Then also, look at how sick the people are, in the sense that they will find some way to use that idea to promote racism, to promote genocide. You got the sterilization of peoples through vaccines. You get what I'm trying to say? And so Islam would obviously be, very much virulently opposed to that and that belief. And so Islam would probably differ in the terminology. They would differ in terms of the causation, and they would also differ in how that can be expanded and applied in other ways, which are not just malicious. They're evil. They're evil. Yeah. Barakallahu feek. طيب.
The second question.
تفضل أحمد. يا.
قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم: "ما من أحد منكم إلا قد وكل له قرينه من الجن وقرينه من الملائكة." The one by Allah will appoint a companion.
وعليكم السلام. All right.
We'll continue.
Yeah, we'll get it after Salah, inshallah. Wa sallallahu barakatuh.
Would you be kind enough, give me a minute of your time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. How many of you that they are on the app, Masjid app, did you get messages from Brother Ansari and things like this? Anybody? Nobody?
The WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
WhatsApp group. If you're on the WhatsApp group, hold your hand up. If you're on the WhatsApp group.
Specifically more about sisters. How many sisters that your name is not in the app? This is 1, 2, 3. Okay, those other sisters, did you receive a message from Brother Ansari concerning a sister coming to give Arabic course?
Yes.
Okay, did any one of you register or answer back anything like this?
I didn't answer that because I need a schedule, like I need to know the times. I didn't.
Okay, please, Brother Ansari, would you send a message again, okay,
Yeah.
to the people? The sister keep calling me and want to know, are you going to go with the course or not? It's a free course. She's qualified teacher, inshallah, to the best of my knowledge. And she's concerned about, while she coming to visit from New York here, she's going to be for 3 weeks. She's giving it for free. So you are not losing anything, okay? And this is a sister to sisters. And I don't want to go and purchase the things that she wants and getting the screen and getting all the things that she wants. And I have only 3 people registered. So please take the word and pass it and let the people know. And if you're willing to attend this course, you can send email to the masjid, okay? Islamic Center of Colombia at yahoo.com. Say that I want to attend because I forward everything to her. So we, at least if we can have one class, 12 sister, 15 sister max, it's an opportunity. So inshallah, please kindly, if you planning to do, let us know from now so we can go ahead with it or we can cancel it, okay? Inshallah.
So what is the time that
Actually, all the information.
She didn't give a
It says
time. She just said, yeah, she just gave,
Yeah.
she just gave the dates. She
So
never gave a
what you
time.
need exactly, the
The time.
hours
hours, yeah.
or that, because she gives the time. Maybe
The
she's
date
free.
is there, but we don't know what the time is.
Okay, it's fine, but did she give time dates?
The dates, yes.
Yes.
Dates.
So she
and
is
days.
here, she don't have anything, she's coming for relaxation, maybe whatever it is. So I would care, send me in your email, okay? Basically, we need to know the time and the days. Something like this. So I can forward your email to her and we get the answer, okay? Because there is certain things that you require, like screen, you understand, and what do you call this?
Projector?
Projector and notebooks and pencils, things to be prepared. So I'm not going to go purchase things, and after this, nobody going to do it.
And is that also in person, or is that gonna be like?
A sister to say she will come and sit here in the masjid, or in the library, or in the sister room, wherever it is. It depends.
Okay.
But if there is any opportunities that we see that it's going to increase our iman or our knowledge, okay, that you should take it, okay? Especially I'm not paying anything, you understand, for it. And some people coming to give us something, we should be appreciative to this, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. If I can be an assistant to anybody, I'm here every day, inshallah, until I die. Okay? Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah accept our good deed, inshallah. Give us sincerity in what we say and what we do.
Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin.